So in the end, if you're a born-again Christian, whichever part of the world you're from, you've got to drop the Christian Zionism. You've got to chuck it out. It's satanic. It's evil. Just because I say these things, by the way, it doesn't mean I say, oh gosh, I'm not a supporter of any of these Islamic terrorist organisations. My gosh. The best thing that the Arabs could have done for themselves, even though I believe the taking of the land was wrong, it was not a land for a people in a land without a people. That's just rubbish. There were Jews, Christians, ancient Jewish community. Now interesting to just look at their genetics. Ancient Jewish community, there were Christians and there were Muslims living in that land. Pastorally, they were living in the land. Rubbish, it's lies to say it's a land without a people. So, we have to say that even though there's an argument that the entire creation of the state was unjust, we can say that about many states. If you go back far enough, you'll see all of our countries are illegitimate. What the Arabs should have done, in my view, is just peacefully accepted the situation. This is very hard. I'll say this from my point of view. In Britain, before I learned a lot more about what was going on in 1938, 39 and 40 in Europe, I would have said, well look, if we were occupied by Germany, I would still say, if we were occupied by Germany, we should simply not resist. Not resist. Look at the French resistance in France. Germany was occupying France. There was the Vichy part, which is, to me, a godsend, and I think treating Marshal Pétain the way he was treated was wrong. Northern part of France was run by Germany. You've seen Casablanca. That's in Vichy France. And Northern France was run by Germany directly. It was remarkably lawful and civilised. But with the French resistance constantly doing what they were doing, they're heroes now. I mean, I had my action man, I had a French resistance uniform for him. Thick plastic cap, sweater, the trousers, and the black shoes. And a Sten gun, I think. The British Sten gun was a lousy gun, by the way. We really should have got the American Tommy gun, but another story. The French resistance could have brought disaster upon French people because you get a reaction to guerrilla warfare that's not pleasant from the occupying army. There's no automatic duty to defend your territory to the end. Catholic just war theory does not say wage war when you have no prospect of winning, quite the opposite. So I'm for occupied Britain accepting the way it was. My mother would have grown up in occupied Britain. My grandmother would have lived in occupied Britain. Because there'd have been no alternative if the invasion had happened, if Operation, what was it, Sea Lion had succeeded, or had been really put into operation. So I say to the Arabs, having laid out that I would accept the necessary occupation of my homeland, that you should have done the same. And if you were Catholics, you would understand why a bit more. You shall not fight and fight when there's no prospect of success, or if the prospect of success means massive death and destruction. You should accept Israeli occupation and pray for God to intervene, for God will intervene for the righteous. It takes time, but think about this. If the war of 1948 hadn't happened, yes, the Israelis were stealing land. They all wanted to steal land. But if the Arab nations had not invaded, there would have been a degree of theft which would be much less than actually happened in 1948. Then if Nasser and the other Arab powers had not invaded in 1967, sorry, not invaded, if they'd not gone to war with the Israelis, I know there's reason to say it's the Israelis who provoked it, as they were provoking all kinds of things in the 1950s, by the way, including sending bombs to their own Jewish people to get them to come to Israel. You don't know about that, do you? Yeah, they're prime terrorists. But I'm speaking about 1967. That war which led to the taking over of the West Bank. That war, had it not happened, there'd be no takeover of the West Bank. Had the Arabs continued to live peacefully with their Jewish masters, their Israeli masters, as it would be effectively masters, right? They would have had a standard of life and a quality of life far better than was available to anybody, unfortunately, in the Arab nations. It's just a sad fact. Maybe it'll be different in the future, who knows? But back then and now is a sad fact. There'd be no freedom. They will be governing themselves. Well, Arabs govern themselves in the Arab nations, and it's not that good, is it? So here now, you're seeing me starting off, slagging off Israel, slagging off born-again Christians, and now saying, but the Arabs shouldn't be fighting the Jews. They shouldn't be fighting the Israelis. What am I? Am I a kind of, am I Hamas or am I Mossad? What am I? Answer, I'm Catholic. And some of this stuff's easy for me to say. I'm not an Arab who's had his family blown up. But nonetheless, if your family is blown up, don't you want to stop your friend's family being blown up? Your brother's family being blown up? Because that's coming next. Stop the cycle of violence now insofar as you can. Right now, it's got its own dynamic as we speak in September the 23rd, 2024. Its own dynamic in Gaza. And yes, I know huge numbers of those deaths on October the 7th, contrary to what the born-again Christians seem to want to accept and what this lady with the cat logo seems to understand. Huge numbers of those deaths were caused by the Israeli armed forces. And you can tell that because Hamas had small arms, but there's whole rows of parked cars incinerated. There are houses blown through by shellfire from tanks. Hamas didn't have this kind of weaponry. They're helicopter gunships, of course, that Israel was using. How many of their own people were killed by them? We don't know, but they cannot be trusted. The Israeli army cannot be trusted. They told us about babies being beheaded. No evidence. It's a lie, we know it's a lie. Babies being put in ovens. False. We have, remember the graphic, one of their chaps saying, oh, we're attacking this hospital. This is when they felt they needed to have excuses for attacking hospitals. There's a Hamas control centre beneath the hospital, and we get this great 3D graphic. After they pretty much demolished the hospital, they went in there. There was nothing. Pretty much nothing. Oh yeah, there may be underground rooms, which anybody would have in a hospital, in the cellars. There's no command centre, no sign of it. It's all gone quiet. In a court, if you have a witness and he lies, you don't trust any of his evidence. So you can't trust anything the Israeli armed forces say. And you can't trust them when they go after other hospitals for whatever reasons they now even bother. I don't even know if they've ever bothered anymore to give excuses, because you born-again Christian Americans, more than the Brits, but you especially have given them the green light, you've provided cover for them, you give them support, and you've made Trump a dog because of this. Because he knows which side his bread's buttered on. He's got to support these people. They give him the money. They may, who knows what they'll do to him if he doesn't support them. But you've given cover, and you call yourselves Christians, and you've seen them kill Christians, your fellow born-again Christians. But I'll be circling back to what I was saying before if I go on about that. The fact is, Israel cannot be trusted. The Israeli army cannot be trusted. The government of Israel cannot be trusted. The Islamic organisations that have run the place cannot be trusted. Hezbollah cannot be trusted. We must then, what do we say? For the Arabs, little Arab kids, they know nothing about this. Even if you ever see them with the green headband and with a little toy gun, they don't know what they're doing. They're brought up that way. In the schools, they're embracing an ideology. They don't know what they're doing. But that doesn't mean we say, well, let them receive the white phosphorus on their skin and make it rot their bones. Let them scream because their parents are killed. Oh, we can't say that. There's no human solution right now. And the earthly solutions may be quite terrible. The ones that are emerging. So what can we do? Pray, pray, pray. That's it. You think that doesn't work? Well, it might not for you Protestants, but it does for us. Here's an example. On the international scale, put aside Fatima and the consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary that resulted 2 years later in Mikhail Gorbachev becoming the head of the Soviet Union and instituting glasnost and perestroika, and then the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union. Just a couple of years after Pope John Paul II responded to what Our Lady asked for in 1929, by the way. It was by then that she made the explicit request, because by then Fatima was recognised by the Holy Church. But if you think, well, that's not the only one, that's just an example, but I'm going to give you a fairly contemporary example. Back in, I think it was 2013, I think it was then, we were at it again. The Americans, the Brits. Oh, Assad in Syria, he's a scumbag. We got to get rid of him for the people to liberate themselves from the Assad family ruthless regime. It's the playbook. We have the same playbook all the time. Obama was not so gung-ho for war, but he did give in the end. He did give in. He said, through his Secretary of State, John Kerry, God, I remember this so vividly, we're going to attack Assad's forces because of chemical weapons we think he's got and he may use. Now, you know what would happen then? If the USA got involved, Assad would fall. Guess what would happen then? Born-again Christians. But you might not care about this, because the Christians in Syria, were Orthodox and Catholic. So we're Mary worshippers. So, you won't think twice about us. Oh, you'll say now, oh no, we don't want you to die though. But you won't think twice. Wouldn't matter to you, isn't on your radar. But, this was what was in the cards. Assad was going to be toppled. The result? Look at Libya. Libya, which has become a hellhole ever since we and the French, with the American backing, liberated it. You know what that wretched woman Hillary Clinton said of Colonel Gaddafi, who had a strong, stable country, where if you're a Christian, you weren't going to be treated badly for being a Christian. Just obey the regime, that's it. They murdered him. What did she say? We came, we saw, he died. All right, well, if Kamala becomes the big cheese in America in November 2024, then she might be Secretary of State again. Happy days are here again, eh? But coming back to Assad. John Kerry, well, we had what Pope Francis called for worldwide prayer by Catholics for peace in Syria. It was all exploding at this point. Peace in Syria. I went to near the Oratory in Kensington, North London, West London, to pray with many others. Others around Britain and around the world prayed for peace in Syria. A day or two later, I'm not so sure about how long it was, John Kerry, Smoothie Chops, was asked, was there anything that could prevent the US attacking Libya? He said, well, if someone would stand up and say they would ensure the removal of chemical weapons from Assad, then the United States would not send in its forces, its air force. Immediately, Sergei Lavrov of Russia, Foreign Minister of Russia, said, we'll do it. We'll do it. And you could see John Kerry, I'm not saying at the very press conference, but he said it so that you see John Kerry subsequently, obviously not expecting that. It wasn't a condition that he expected anyone would try to fulfill. But our God made that happen to save our Catholic and Orthodox brothers and sisters in Syria. That's how prayer works when you're a Catholic, responding to the request of the Pope. So the Russians removed the chemical weapons. The Assad government was supported by the Russian army. And Syria did not descend into the chaos of Libya. And the Christian people who did suffer at the hands of the ISIS organisation and Al-Qaeda were not decimated. Were not decimated as some were decimated in Iraq and Libya. That's the power of prayer. Show me an example, born-again Christians. Show me an example, Protestants, where you've changed history through your prayers. I'll give you other examples where we've changed history. I'll be going off topic. So we will light candles to Holy Mother Mary, Christian Prince. We will build our statues, our beautiful artwork, everywhere that made Europe so fine. We will pray before our statues. I will kneel before my statues. I will burn incense in front of my statues. Because God answers my church's prayers. God changes the world through my church. The Blessed Mother visits my Catholic people. Jesus visits my Catholic people. What have you got to say? Some fool says, oh yeah, Jesus spoke to me and I've written a book about it. You go on like that. You go on like that. Whatever you do, stop saying there's such a thing as Christian Zionism. It's an oxymoron. Time to lay it to rest.